Have you ever felt like you're trying to achieve something, but there's this invisible barrier holding you back? Some kind of gatekeeper stopping you from moving forward. It could be anything. A tough situation at work, a personal problem you're dealing with, or just that feeling of being stuck.
Yeah, I think that experience of hitting a wall, whether it comes from inside us or seems to be coming from somewhere else, is something that we all go through as humans.
It really is. And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today. We've been looking at parts of this really interesting YouTube video, The Overcomer. It was posted on February 16th, 2025, and it's by Pastor Jerry Eze.
Right, from his third service.
That's right. And the video talks about this powerful concept of being an overcomer and consciously taking control of the important areas of your life. It's like you're taking your place at the gate. And he uses this really captivating story from the Bible about Jael and Sisera to illustrate what he means.
So in this deep dive today, we're going to try to unpack these ideas from the video, explore what they really mean, and most importantly, see how they might connect to the challenges and views that you might be facing in your own life. We're not going to be getting into a theological debate or anything like that. Instead, we want to look at these ideas as powerful metaphors for taking charge of your life and overcoming obstacles.
The video starts off with this incredible energy, right? This unshakable conviction. Right from the get-go, there's this constant message. You are an overcomer. It's almost like a positive affirmation. No more obstacles, all doors are open, new grace. What were your first thoughts when you heard that powerful wave of positive declarations?
Well, I was definitely struck by the sheer intensity of all those positive statements. It's clear that it's a deliberate attempt to foster a mindset focused on victory and the possibility of achieving anything. And it's fascinating because regardless of your personal religious beliefs or background, there's research in psychology that actually suggests that regularly engaging in positive self-talk can help you build a stronger sense of self-efficacy. So it's more than just thinking positively. It can actually have a real impact on our beliefs about what we're capable of achieving.
And the video gives some very specific examples of what this overcoming can look like in real life. We hear about things like people experiencing a complete reversal of seizures, someone finding a lost key, even stories of people being healed from illnesses. There's also mention of breaking free from the influence of past negative covenants, and even an instance of a worship tree suddenly withering away.
What I find so interesting here is the wide variety of situations that are presented as examples of overcoming. They range from serious health problems to everyday annoyances, like losing something important, and even some more abstract concepts. Looking at this from a broader perspective, the underlying message seems to be about having a deep-seated belief in the possibility of positive change. It's about cultivating that feeling deep down that breakthroughs can happen in any area of life.
And that brings us to a really important part of the video, the retelling of the story of Jael and Sisera, which comes from the book of Judges. For those who might not be familiar with it, could you give us a quick summary of what happens in this story?
Sure. In Judges chapter 4, we're introduced to Sisera, who was the commander of the Canaanite army. He's defeated in battle and is desperately trying to escape. He ends up seeking refuge in the tent of a woman named Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Now, there was a peace treaty between the Canaanites and Heber's family, so Sisera thought he'd be safe there. Jael welcomes Sisera into her tent, gives him something to cover himself with, and when he asks for water because he's thirsty, she gives him milk instead. Totally exhausted from running for his life, Sisera falls into a deep sleep. It's at this point that Jael takes a tent peg and a hammer, walks over to him quietly, and drives the peg straight through his temples, killing him.
Wow, that takes a pretty dramatic turn. And in the video, there's a lot of focus on this particular moment where Sisera asks Jael to stand guard at the entrance to the tent and to tell anyone who might come looking for him that he's not there. Why is that specific detail so important to this discussion?
That's the point where the idea of the gatekeeper really takes center stage. The video interprets Sisera's request as him basically handing over his safety, his literal gate, to Jael. The key point being made is that whoever controls the gates controls your life. In that moment of extreme vulnerability, Sisera put his trust in someone else to guard his point of access, both physically in terms of the tent and metaphorically in terms of his fate.
And the video really highlights the contrast between Sisera, this seasoned military commander, a veteran of warfare, and Jael, who in that historical and cultural setting might have been seen as just a housewife. She wouldn't have been someone typically associated with military strategy or defense.
Precisely. The interpretation emphasizes the idea that Sisera's downfall began the moment he gave up control of his own gate. It emphasizes that even someone who might appear ordinary or underestimated can become a powerful force for change, the one who stands firm at the gate, and even overcome someone perceived as much stronger. The video draws a direct parallel. If Joel, who seemed to be just a housewife, could overcome a veteran like Sisera by taking on that gatekeeper role, then anyone can overcome their own challenges by doing the same thing in their lives.
So this leads us naturally to this central metaphor, taking your place at the gate. If we're talking about our own lives, what does that gate actually represent according to the video?
Well, think of the gate as any area of your life where big decisions are made, where you can have influence, and where being watchful is absolutely crucial. It's like the entry and exit points that impact your overall well-being, how you move towards your goals, and your inner peace. This could include things like your family dynamics, your career choices, your physical and mental health, your personal beliefs and values, even how you participate in your community or society as a whole. It's about those parts of your life where you have a real stake and where your active involvement is essential. We could even think of these gates in a psychological sense as our cognitive filters the ways we process information and allow influences to shape our thoughts and actions. Being a good gatekeeper, then, is about developing critical thinking and consciously choosing what we allow to affect us.
And there's a strong warning against being passive, isn't there? Against just lying down and letting other influences, especially negative ones, take over at these really crucial gates.
Oh, absolutely. The video is a clear call to wake up and become active warriors who carefully guard their own gates. It suggests that lots of people might be feeling burnt out, overwhelmed by all the demands of life, and as a result, they're unintentionally letting others, or even bad habits or thought patterns, dictate what comes into and goes out of their lives. The main message is a powerful call to take back control of your life and actively shape your own reality.
And the video gives some concrete examples of these gates. It talks about things like ensuring the well-being of your children, your career path, with a specific emphasis on prayer and fasting within that particular religious context. And it even extends the metaphor to bigger entities like cities and even nations.
Those examples really show how widely applicable this gate concept is. Obviously, looking after your children's well-being and development is a huge responsibility. Similarly, your career path, which requires dedicated effort, smart decisions, and perseverance, is another very important gate. Extending this to communities and nations suggests that we all have a shared responsibility and that we can have a huge positive impact when we actively participate in protecting our shared spaces and values. The video also mentions the idea of resisting negative spiritual forces that might try to prevent good things from happening, which further emphasizes the importance of staying alert at these metaphorical gates.
Now, what about the potential downsides, the risks of not taking care of these responsibilities as a gatekeeper? What might happen if we abandon our post, so to speak?
The video doesn't sugarcoat the consequences. If you neglect your role as a gatekeeper, whether it's because you're feeling hurt, exhausted, or just not paying attention, it can create an opening for bad influences to gain control. There's an analogy used that talks about how when you're completely worn out, you're essentially telling an enemy, which in this context is described as a territorial spirit, to stand guard in your place. The idea is that by becoming passive, you're actually inviting problems and undesirable outcomes into your life. For those who aren't familiar with the term territorial spirits, it's a concept in certain religious beliefs that refers to spiritual beings associated with particular places or areas of influence. So the metaphor here highlights that feeling of having external negative forces affecting our lives and the need to actively resist them.
And there's a pretty sobering example in the video about how negative cycles can keep repeating. It says that every 4 years somebody will die if no one actively steps in. The point being made is that if there's no one consciously standing guard at the gate, these destructive patterns can just continue unchecked.
That's a very powerful and kind of unsettling image of problems that are deeply ingrained and keep coming back. The video suggests that having someone actively watching, someone diligently guarding the gate, is absolutely essential for spotting and ultimately breaking free from these harmful patterns. It emphasizes personal accountability, the feeling of responsibility you have, perhaps within your own belief system, to remain vigilant even when it's hard, or even when others don't seem to deserve that kind of protection or effort.
And the video wraps up with this intriguing analogy of Jael giving Sisera milk when he had only asked for water. What's the message or takeaway from that particular action?
The way it's presented is that it's about going way beyond simply resisting the bad things in your life. It's a call to actively and purposefully work toward overcoming existing challenges and even to proactively help others who are facing their own difficulties. Giving milk when only water was asked for is seen as a symbol of going above and beyond in your efforts to overcome and make a real difference.
And it ties back to that core theme of being an active overcomer. Someone who isn't just avoiding negative things, but is actively engaged in making positive changes. There's even a specific example in the video about not just avoiding something like lust yourself, but actually becoming a savior to others who are struggling with it.
That's a powerful example of how this principle might play out in real life. It's about shifting from a purely defensive stance to becoming a force for good, making a tangible, positive impact, not just in your own life, but potentially in the lives of the people around you as well. It represents the ultimate expression of the overcomer mindset, not just surviving challenges, but thriving and helping others to thrive too.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what would you say are the most important insights we've gained from Pastor Eze's video today?
Well, we've looked at this empowering concept of declaring yourself an overcomer, the strategic importance of identifying and actively protecting those key gates in our lives, the potential dangers of becoming passive and neglecting those responsibilities, and finally, this inspiring call to not just resist our challenges, but to proactively strive to overcome them and even support others in doing the same.
It certainly gives us a lot to think about. And that brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. When you think about your own life, what would you say are your most significant gates? Who or what has influence at those gates right now? And perhaps most importantly, what proactive steps could you consider taking to fully embrace your role as the overcomer and the active gatekeeper of your own destiny? It's worth taking some time to really reflect on these ideas. You might even want to go back and watch the original video again to see what stands out to you the most on your own personal journey.
Exactly. Think about those areas in your life where you feel like you're hitting a wall, where you feel like something or someone else is in control. When you look at it through the lens of the gatekeeper metaphor, it can give you a whole new perspective on how to approach those challenges and step into a more empowered, proactive role in shaping your own outcomes.